Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar with Fullscript and Dr. Michael Gaeta. I'm very excited to have everyone attend today. I know middle of the day for us is easy, so we appreciate that you guys are joining us. We're going to be speaking, well, Dr. Gaeta will be speaking on ending the autoimmune epidemic with natural functional medicine. My name's Kaylee. I'm with Fullscript. We're very excited to have Dr. Michael Gaeta here today, and we're going to hopefully learn, I'm going to definitely learn a little bit about the causes and latest perspectives on the autoimmune process. Before we get started though, a little housekeeping. This is a reminder that this webinar is being recorded. So everyone will get sent a link to the recording after the event, everyone who registered. So don't worry if you have to drop off early, you'll get a link to the recording. It's also available on Fullscript's website at fullscript.com/webinars. You can find all our past webinars there as well. And if you have any questions during the presentation, there is a question box on your, or question drop down on your control panel, where you can enter the questions. I will be here monitoring on the back end, but we will also have a live Q&A at the end of the presentation as well. So that being said, I'd like to thank Dr. Michael Gaeta for being here today. If you don't know, he holds licenses in acupuncture, oh my goodness, I'm gonna say this one wrong, dietetics, nutrition, and massage therapy, my apologies, as well as he's a doctor in acupuncture and oriental medicine in Rhode Island. He has 30 years of clinical and has trained more than 17,000 practitioners over the last 27 years. He created the Gaeta Institute for Holistic Health Education to upgrade the patient care and practice success of natural health professionals in order to create a world of resilient people who make their positive contribution and choose a lifestyle of nature first, drugs last is the motto, and I love it. And so I could go on and on. I know with that experience as a background, you could go on and on, but I'm going to pass it over to you and get into the presentation, and then I will see you all for the Q&A.
Well, great, thank you, and welcome everyone. Greetings to you from Colorado, and I'm Dr. Michael Gaeta, and I really thank you for being with us today. We have an important subject to consider, which is the autoimmune epidemic, and how you and I specifically, through our clinical practice, can actually end the autoimmune epidemic, which has been quite significant and increasing in recent decades. So I do welcome your questions if you put those in the chat, and I will address as many of those as we have time for. This is a subject that has been of particular importance to me over the past 30 years of practice, and is really one of my favorite subjects to discuss, because there is so much that we can do once we understand the causes and the autoimmune process. There's so much that we can do to actually prevent and reverse the autoimmune process. And having treated many, many thousands of patients over the last 30 years, I can say with great confidence, and also that of my students over the last 27 years of teaching, that this approach really works. And this is a subject that I got interested in many years ago. And there was a patient that came in, and I originally myself got interested in this area of functional medicine. And I've been practicing Chinese medicine and functional medicine for the last 30 years, and became really interested in the subject because I had my own health issues that I was working with myself. And in my own case, they were very much digestive related. And I had just an enormous range of digestive issues myself. And my own flow chart, when, kind of health history wise, I had a whole range of a series of ear infections when I was a kid. One of my earliest childhood memories was sitting in my mom's lap as a little kid, just crying and bawling because of the pain in my ears. And then she would give me this pink liquid, which was the penicillin, And then after a few days, the terrible pain in my ears would go away for a few months, and then the pain would come back in my ears. And then, there I was sitting on mom's lap again in the rocking chair, waiting, for the little pink liquid. And then eventually it would improve. And so this repeated rounds of antibiotics, and my theory is that it was possibly related to the childhood vaccines, which often are associated, and we have good evidence of this, with an increase in otitis media and ear infections and other issues. So that may have been the genesis, perhaps, I don't know. But this antibiotic use led to a whole range of digestive issues that continued until I became exposed to the functional medicine approach in Chinese medicine. And this really dramatically changed my life. And the bloating, gas, fatigue, sweet cravings, a lot of these things really dramatically improved. And that led me to want to help other people, with this approach. And I want to share with you a bit of what I've learned about that approach today. And I remember one of the cases, his name was John, and he came in with very severe rheumatoid arthritis. He was 54, and he had remarkably, very bad rheumatoid arthritis. He had very little grip strength, pretty severe pain in the joints of his hand. And he was really at the end of his rope. He had been having symptoms for 15 years, and he was diagnosed about 10 years before. And he had been taking steroids, and they gave him methotrexate. This is many years ago, before some of the newer drugs to treat rheumatoid arthritis. They were going to do gold injections. The steroids were having terrible side effects, and he was really in a bad way. And he was an electrician, a master electrician. And in taking his history, I noticed something interesting. And this is one of the things we need to look at with autoimmunity, is to take a good history. And he was an electrician, and his electrical contracting company had a contract with the city of New York. That's where I grew up and practiced for my first 19 years in New York City. And his job for the last, I don't know, it was over 15 years, it was closer to 20 years, was he was either in the New York City sewer system, rewiring or repairing or replacing wiring in the city sewer system, or he was in an abandoned building. He had his company had city contracts to rehabilitate abandoned buildings to create low-income housing. And so he had this enormous, like epic amount of chemical exposure and environmental toxicity that eventually led to this autoimmune process affecting his joints very severely. And I'll never forget, I did the initial evaluation, did a report of findings, and explained the cost of care and treatments and acupuncture and body work and supplementation and herbs and diet and lifestyle changes. And it was amazing. His wife, he kind of was looking down at his hands and was really kind of uncomfortable. And then his wife, who was with him, turned to him. He said, "It's okay. I'll go back to work and to pay for your care." And because he was really having a hard time working because of, as an electrician, not being able to work with his hands. So the good news was, within months, he was off all his medications. I think it took us about 4 months. He was off his steroids. He chose to discontinue the chemotherapy, the methotrexate they had him on at the time, and the painkillers. He was taking, just pallets worth of Advil and other non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, aggravating, obviously the condition long term. But he was basically drug-free within about 4 months. And he was just so happy that, he could pick up his grandkids again. He could open a jar, his grip strength returned. The pain was dramatically relieved. He was just really very positive. So I want to share with you today kind of the principles of how we helped him. And so I want to get into that with you now, of some of the specifics. But I'll never forget John, because he was really committed to his care. He realized that conventional medicine really had very little to offer him. He was still miserable despite taking all the drugs, and he just wanted a different approach. And he was very pleased that there was a natural approach that could really help him. So let's take a look here, and there it is. Okay, let me bring this down. Okay, let's go here to the beginning. Okay, there we go. Okay. So this is our topic today, ending the autoimmune epidemic with natural functional medicine. And this is a subject that has immense relevance to each of us today in practice. And, you know, we could really say, if you don't understand autoimmune disease, you're not really going to be able to truly help the modern patient. We really do have a true epidemic, in this case, of autoimmune disease, affecting easily, conservatively, 20% of the US population, which is, you know, over 60 million people working with one or more of these 155 or more identified autoimmune conditions. And we could really say that if untreated and unresolved, that all chronic disease eventually becomes autoimmune. And we'll talk about exactly why that is. But this is so important for us to realize, so that to really help the modern patient, you and I must be autoimmune proficient practitioners. And this is really a big part of the reason why we selected this topic for today. And I really want to thank the wonderful folks who've just been delightful to work with, Cameron Moores, Max Paritsky, and the many folks at Fullscript, just delightful folks to work with. What a great company, and I'm just really honored that they invited me to spend some time with you today to talk about this subject and what I have found, and also my students have found over the years to be a very effective approach to this subject. So with that, just so you know, this is everything I'm sharing with you today is just me. It's not what Fullscript or any of the product companies that Fullscript works with, specifically Standard Process and Medi-Europe, have to say. This is just from my own experience and research into this subject. So none of this has been evaluated by the FDA, which I think makes it a lot more valid and useful. But this is it's just me. So Buckminster Fuller said, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality." And the reason is that what we see in the present is simply a manifestation of what was set in motion in the past and manifests in the present. He continues, "To change something, you build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete." And this is especially relevant in autoimmune disease because the old model of immune suppression and anti-inflammatories has really failed to address the causes of this condition. Sure, you can suppress symptoms temporarily, but to actually address what's going on, the causes, the etiology, the pathophysiology, is so incredibly important. And so that's what we're going to be focusing on today. And that was John. He did beautifully, and really is a testament to his commitment to his own care, which was really amazing. So let's see here. Okay. All right, so we've got to get back to the slide here. Okay, great. All right, so to just put a frame on this, there are two approaches we see to autoimmune disease and issues in general, two approaches to healthcare. And this is very important that we understand this. In holistic health, there are 7 key principles that I've identified so far in holistic healthcare. And this is the first, and we'll see how this applies. We start with what's right in a person, not just with what's wrong, diagnose and treat, but we start with what's right. We increase and release the person's innate healing capacities, and we go for root cause resolution, not just symptom management, but root cause resolution. Do as I do, not just as I say. So we embody something of what we encourage our patients to aspire to and kind of walk the talk. And then nature first, drugs last. That's how I like to describe this to patients. Not against drugs, they have their place, but this is a lifestyle medicine approach. Early treatment and prevention is very key. Now, what I call natural functional medicine, it's a term I coined a few years ago in 2016, includes some of the classical kind of functional medicine approaches of a good history, looking at the patient's narrative, using in-office assessment tools, functional lab testing, not just the reference ranges, but the optimal ranges is important, diet and lifestyle counseling, and using food and plant-based supplementation. And that's why I call it natural functional medicine. I was originally trained in sort of the kind of conventional, if you would call it, functional medicine approach, which focuses on using synthetic chemical isolates in supplements. So I did that for many years, the first several years of my practice. And I hadn't really heard of, more of a food-based approach to supplementation, and was using, high-dose chemicals for many years. And then when I kind of upgraded my practice to using more food-based formulas and plant-based formulas, the results were remarkably better. The patient complaints were remarkably less in terms of adverse effects, and it was more restorative. Actually, it was feeding, nourishing, restoring the body, not just managing symptoms. So that was a big revelation for me, having been steeped in kind of the nutraceutical approach. The food-based approach I found was much more effective in much less time. And patients didn't just have better symptoms, but they actually felt more well and more whole. So this is what I call the whole food philosophy, the 2 areas of whole foods diet and food-based supplements, which I think is a superior approach, and it's a humble approach. It's working with what nature provides and not trying to improve on that.
Human civilization is the precedent of chemical therapy over nutrition. It's the substitution of artificial therapy over natural, of poisons over food, in which we are feeding people poisons, trying to correct the reactions of starvation. You all know how ridiculous that is, but you all know how widely it's being done.
And hopefully that audio came through okay. You can let me know in the chat if you like, if the audio came through okay. But I wanted to play you that excerpt from Roy Lee. And so it's the unknown factors, the things that are in foods that we haven't yet identified, is one of the reasons why we take this kind of humble approach to nutrition, which I think is really important. So I think that's an important perspective, and it really is proven out in my own perspective. And the chemical approach, they act more as drugs or pharmacological agents than as foods. And this is an old study, an old paper in the American Dietetic Association. Synthetic vitamins must be used with caution in order to prevent the development of deficiencies more serious than the deficiency we set out to control. And in the Lancet, these essential associated food factors are not found with synthetic vitamins, which for this reason cannot replace the natural ones. There's my website, michaelgaeta.com, which is the website for the Gaeta Institute. So when we look at autoimmune disease, we have to define some terms. And the first term we need to define is autoimmunity versus autoimmune disease. Now, autoimmunity is a necessary process. And there are natural tissue antibodies or autoantibodies that help to clear necrotic or damaged cells and cellular debris in the body from necrotic or degenerated tissue. And that's normal. We must have low levels of autoantibodies to do the housekeeping. So it's part of the cleanup crew to eliminate and target this cellular debris, especially the autoantibodies, especially against nucleoproteins, as we'll see shortly. Now, autoimmune disease is different. This is where we have over 155 known conditions where there is an excess of autoantibodies. And this excess of autoantibodies then will damage the associated organ or tissue. Autoimmune disease is associated with a loss of immunological tolerance, where the immune system is directed not to attack body cells. And what happens here in autoimmune disease is that the injury from the autoantibodies to that associated organs, for example, the thyroid or the joints or what have you, exceeds the body's repair ability. And so you have progressive degeneration. And this is what characterizes autoimmune disease, is inflammation and degeneration and loss of function. Now, if you understand the cause, then you can implement the correction. Here are some examples. And I wonder who knows, you can type it in the chat if you like, who knows what or in the questions if you prefer, what the world's most common autoimmune disease is. It is, in fact, rheumatoid, that's right, very good, Pamela, thank you. Rheumatoid arthritis, some between 0.5% and 1% of the entire world population has RA, which is very significant. Now, there are only two things that trigger an immune response or an immune reaction or activate the immune system. One is a pathogen or necrosis. Now, chronic infection in the form of a pathogen can lead to autoimmunity, and necrosis, premature cell death, cell degeneration, dying young, so to speak, also can trigger autoimmunity. Now, when we understand autoimmune disease, we have to understand the totality of the immune system. And here you have the typical kind of two-box model of the immune system, the innate and the acquired. And this is, about 80 years old, this understanding, and it's certainly valid. But in the last 80 years, we've learned quite a bit more than simply the innate and acquired, cellular and adaptive. But we also now understand that the microbiome has a critical role in the immune function, immune response. The nervous system has its own kind of in-house nervous system. And then we have the interferon system, originally named for its ability to interfere with viral replication, but now we understand it actually mediates the communication between the innate and acquired immune system, and this class of about 20 cytokines has very broad immune modulating effects, and certainly has relevance in viral infection, but also far beyond that. And then we have the endocannabinoid system, which was just discovered in the last few decades, but is a neurotransmitter system that has remarkable impact in regulating our immune response. So this is very significant. So once we understand what's happening with in autoimmune diseases, we have usually a deficiency or a weakness, a depletion in the innate immune defenses, such as our epithelial barriers, mucous membranes, phagocytes, and natural killer cells. The acquired or adaptive immune system, humoral immunity, is mostly made up of antibodies or proteins that locate and target specific proteins and provide also immunological memory. We also know that the innate immune system, the cellular immunity, actually has a memory function, that we don't need antibodies to remember a pathogen. And we also, and I learned in school, 32 years ago, that the innate immune system was non-specific. This kind of primitive, thuggish inflammatory response. That's actually not true. We now understand that the cellular immunity actually can tailor its response to specific pathogens. So every year that goes by, we learn of the increased importance of the innate or cellular immunity and of the, not unimportant, but less significant nature of the adaptive or antibody mediated immunity. There's this idea in, modern thinking that if you don't have antibodies, then you're susceptible to an infection, which is not true, because that's only one part of the 6 areas of the immune system. And if you lack antibodies, then you're vulnerable, which is also false. Because of the same reason. There's only one aspect of the 6 areas of the immune system. But this whole like antibodies equals immunity, no antibodies, no immunity, this sort of mindset has really taken hold, which is unfortunate. And I think partly that was to sell vaccines, which just temporarily stimulate antibodies to artificial antigens. But it's an incorrect view of immunity, that it's only about the antibodies. That's really inaccurate. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I just want, we could easily spend the rest of our time just on this little chart. But the idea is that there is a complex relationship of the various aspects of immunity that leads to antibody release, a B cell differentiation, the Th2 response. But there are other helper, Th is helper T cell 1, and Th2 helper T cell 2. But there are other autoimmune responses such as Th17 mediated autoimmune disease. So this is just kind of a brief review. So this is from another gem from Dr. Lee that I wanted to show you, and just let me know in the, yeah, there it is.
Most of our textbooks on immune reactions discuss nothing but the antibodies that are developed against foreign proteins. In the next period of scientific development of this physiological reaction, you're going to hear more about nitrogen. This is just described, but you won't find them in the text. You won't find them in periodicals. They take a few years between the time that that's discovered, reported, and gets into the journal before it's in the text.
That's remarkable. That was Dr. Royal Lee in 1955, speaking at Los Angeles Chiropractic College in 1955, predicting the coming autoimmune surge. And that was, remarkably, that was 67 years ago or so that he described that. It's quite remarkable. And yeah, we can, if it's okay with Kaylia, I can share with her to send out after the webinar the slides. If that's okay with you, I'm happy to provide my deck. And
yeah, that would be great. I know we've had a couple questions come through about that.
Yeah, happy to. Yeah, I mean, you can't possibly write all this stuff down. So
yeah, and it's a great resource to have for sure.
Yeah. So anyway, Royal Lee was really quite a genius and really was one of the discoverers of the autoimmune process. And he described it before there was even a term, autoimmune disease. So he really was, the first, modern discoverer of autoimmunity, what caused it, and actually how to reverse it. And his insights are still, beyond a lot of what's understood today in conventional practice. So that brings us to my model of autoimmunity, which is a triad of autoimmune etiology. And this is very important because if you understand this, then you can understand how to reverse the autoimmune process and to prevent the autoimmune process. So there are 3 main drivers of autoimmune disease, and you'll see most of the time in conventional articles and even journals And they'll say it's idiopathic. We don't know why it happens. The body just starts attacking itself, goes totally insane, and we don't know why. It's kind of crazy. But this is utterly false. We know exactly what contributes. Now, I'm not saying it's simple, but in a sense it is. Once you understand the basic idea, the approach to helping autoimmune patients is not actually that much different once you understand this triad. So the first cause of autoimmune disease or contributor, we don't really talk about causes in holistic health. We talk about more about contributing factors. What contributes to health? What contributes to disease? So immune dysregulation, I'm going to go into detail as to what each of these means, is one. Then we have necrosis or premature cell death, and then gastrointestinal dysfunction. So once we really get that, then we know what to do with our healthy patients who would like to, prevent an autoimmune disease from taking hold, and also how to help our autoimmune patients who have Sjogren's or Graves or Hashimoto's or RA or MS, what to do. So let's look at this in a little more detail. Necrosis is the first of the three. This is where we have extensive degeneration of that tissue or that organ, so that the debris from these basically necrotic cells explode, leaving a mess. And then that mess has to be cleaned up. Part of that mess is highly antigenic, highly engaging of the immune system. It actually must never be in the blood. You must never have nucleoproteins, the blueprints of new cells in the blood, because if they travel to distal sites, then they will start assembling that cell type in that area. So you must never have nucleoproteins in the bloodstream. That's why they're so highly antigenic and so highly reactive to the immune system. And so we have a normal cleanup crew to clean up cellular debris. But if you imagine, like here at my house here, they pick up the garbage every Thursday, and I fill up the garbage can with whatever happened that week, and they take it away. But imagine the house, there was a tornado and the house got destroyed, and I put the whole house worth of debris out on the curb. And then the sanitation department comes, and there's like this massive pile of sheetrock and wood and plumbing and appliances and furniture and all kinds of stuff sitting on the curb. Well, that's too much for the sanitation department to clean up. And this would cause an enormous problem in the entire ecosystem of cellular debris cleanup, and would cause systemic problems. Because while they're trying to fill up their garbage truck with my house full of debris, all the other houses are not getting cleaned up. And so you get an overwhelm of what we call the mononuclear phagocyte system, or used to be called the reticuloendothelial system, which is largely sort of kind of the lymphatic system. That's the cleanup crew. And if there's so much cellular debris from so much necrotic tissue, from so much degeneration, from tissue damage, electromagnetic fields, malnutrition, toxicity, whatever, infection, hypoxia, whatever the cause is, that excess of necrotic tissue overwhelms the cleanup crew, and the debris actually leaks out of the lymphatic system and into the bloodstream. And that is a problem. And most, but not all, autoimmune diseases are targeting nucleoproteins, which are highly antigenic. There are exceptions, like MS, for example. It's not the nucleoproteins that are targeted. But most of the time, this is what's happening. And so we can understand therapeutically, well, how do we prevent this from happening? Well, we increase cellular resilience. And I call it cytoprotective therapy. Then we have etiology number 2 is immune dysregulation, weakened innate immunity. And this I could probably draw for you better than I can, or maybe there's a way I could draw it for you easily. Let me just look at the share. Okay. Okay, so let's see if we have video here. Okay. All right, so let's see, where's my video? Here it is. There it is, okay. Let's get my video going. Okay, good. Well, can folks see me? Maybe Kelia, can you see my video, the webcam? Is that okay?
I can just see you on camera, no slides or anything.
Great.
Is that,
Okay, good.
yeah.
Good. I'm just trying to see. Oh, why can't I'm just trying to see it myself. Okay. I'm seeing the audience view is a little messed up here. Okay. All right. Well, as long as you can see me, that's good.
Yeah.
I can't see that you can see me, but that's all right. All right. So if we look at this understanding, I can just draw it for you a little bit. Here's the immune system. And we're just looking at the 2-box model right now of innate or cellular immunity. And let's see. So we have innate, and Kalia, can you see this little picture here?
Yep, I can see the sheet. It's on the camera. I think maybe it's good that you're explaining it. The only thing is, you know, with the mirroring image, it's a little backwards with the camera, but like the words are backwards, but we can see the drawing for sure.
Okay, good. Yeah, my extraordinarily primitive artistic skills. I'm better with a piano. That was my first career. But we have the innate or cellular immunity, and then we have the acquired or adaptive antibody-mediated immunity. And what's happening in autoimmune disease, in part, in many cases, is a weakness of the innate or cellular immune defenses, leading to an accumulation of chronic low-level infections, bacterial, viral, fungal, parasitic infections that linger. The patient may not even have symptoms, but they have chronic low-level infections, stealth pathogens. And this, over time, leads to an overactivity in the acquired or humoral immunity. And this increase in antibodies will, over time, potentially cross-react with other tissues. And then you will start to develop cross-reactivity through molecular mimicry of these chronic infections. Antibodies to those chronic infections will then cross-react with body tissues, and you have autoimmunity. And we see many autoimmune diseases are highly linked to chronic infection, rheumatoid arthritis being an example. So what we need to do in terms of helping the patient is we need to strengthen innate immune defenses. We need to strengthen, build cellular immunity. And this is dependent on nutrition. Nutrition is the foundation for cellular immunity. And so this is about nutrition. So the most important mineral, for example, for the cellular immune defenses is calcium. Ionized calcium. I use for patients, I give them calcium lactate, which is a wonderful, standard process formula, very easily absorbed, readily ionized calcium. Then we have the most important vitamin for innate or cellular immunity is vitamin C complex. Again, vitamin C is not ascorbic acid. Ascorbic acid is one part of the C complex, but the whole C complex, as found in foods, and I use the formula Cataplex C, is a whole food concentrate of the foods that are high in different aspects of the C complex, is incredibly important. You really can't even do phagocytosis. The main activity of cellular immunity is phagocytosis. Can't do it without adequate ionized calcium and C complex. Vitamin F, helping to transport that calcium from the blood into the tissues. Vitamin D for absorbing that calcium from the gut into the bloodstream. So these are just a few examples. Even vitamin A complex which is the anti-infective factor, as it was originally called, increasing epithelial resistance to infection. So these are all cataplexes in the standard process land. Whole food vitamin complex is called a cataplex. So you have cataplex C, cataplex F, cataplex D, cataplex A. And then in the herbal realm, the best herb in the world, easily, for strengthening the cellular or innate immune defenses is echinacea. Echinacea root, ideally a blend of angustifolia and purpurea root. So we'll talk about that shortly, but the most potent echinacea product in the world by far is Mediherb, also Mediherb echinacea premium. So we need to strengthen the innate immune defenses. We need to clear these chronic low-level infections and calm down. This will lead to a calming down of this excessive autoantibody assault on the affected organ. So this is one model of autoimmunity. So with that, I'm just going to jump back into the slides here. Okay. There it is. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Okay. So we did that. We did that. Okay. So that's model 1. Let's see. Here it is. Yeah. So the other thing that is necessary in autoimmunity is the danger state. The danger state is a state of high chronic immune activation. And this leads to the loss of immunological tolerance. Now, why would the immune system? Now, the immune system should be in a state of high alert or reactivity briefly if there is exposure to a potential pathogen. But for the immune system to be in a chronic state of activation, chronic immune stimulation of activation is very dangerous, because this is where we lose immunological tolerance, and the distinguishing of the immune system between self and non-self breaks down, and the immune system will actually start to target body cells. Now, how do we get into that danger state, which appears to be like a necessary precondition even for autoimmunity? It can be from necrosis, which we talked about, dysbiosis. I would add to that, included in that is chronic infection, or very much so, or vaccine adjuvants like aluminum hydroxide and squalene are put in the vaccine specifically to intentionally create that state of chronic immune immune activation, of hyperimmune stimulation persistently. And, not surprisingly, we live in the most vaccinated nation on earth, and we have the most autoimmune disease by far. I believe that's one of the reasons. Average worldwide incidence of autoimmune disease in developed nations is about 10% of the population. In the US, the estimate now is between 20 and 25% of the US population. And this is one, not the only reason, but one of the reasons is our enormous exposure, more so than any population in history, to injected aluminum. Aluminum isn't that dangerous when it's swallowed, but when it's injected, it's extraordinarily dangerous and is a clear, irrefutable, direct cause of autoimmune disease, at least in certain patients. So these are all the many reasons why the immune system will be in this dangerous state. So we need to modulate the immune response so that it's not in this, kind of a, DEFCON 1, high reactivity. That's a military term of high reactivity of the military state. This is very important. So the key here is innate immunity. We have to strengthen our innate immune defenses, prevent pathogens from becoming chronic. If we're exposed to something, we clear it, it's over. And that's really the key. So the innate immune defenses are very key to preventing really all chronic disease and reversing all chronic disease, we must have robust immune defenses. So, calcium, C, F, for example, echinacea, these are very important. Now, very interestingly, autoantibodies often appear long before there are clinical symptoms. In some cases, up to 26 years before clinical symptoms appear. And very interestingly, using apheresis, they have cleared autoantibodies from a patient's blood, and they don't actually improve. They actually don't get better just from getting rid of the autoantibodies. So it appears that the autoantibodies are not causal primarily in autoimmune disease. Also, another recent discovery in immunology is that human antibodies are polyspecific. It's not just one antibody, one antigen. It's actually one antibody can react with a range of antigens. So here's a little picture of a single antibody or protein interacting with a whole range of different targets, not just one. And so the potential for cross-reactivity is enormous. And that's why we want the immune system to be very strong, but very quiet and not in a state of hyperactivity. So that's very important because the potential for cross-reactivity is enormous. So this persistent autoantibody production is related to things like dysbiosis and gut issues and a weakened cellular or innate immune system, immunity. Now, autoantibodies appear to not be the cause, but rather, in effect, a downstream effect of an upstream cause, like dysbiosis, like chronic infection, like leaky gut, like immune dysregulation, like necrosis. The autoantibodies seem to be collateral damage of the body's attempt to resolve the infection or the digestive issue or whatever it is. So the third cause of autoimmune disease is gastrointestinal dysfunction. This means two things. There's two areas here related to autoimmunity. One is dysbiosis, which is, as I explained to patients, is too many bad guys and not enough good guys in the gut. So this very remarkable microbial environment in the gut is literally, we now understand, one of the chief control systems in the body. We used to think there were just two control systems in the body that regulated everything, which is the nervous system and the endocrine system. But now we understand there's a third kind of pan-regulatory entity in the body beyond our hormones and beyond the nervous system, which is the gut microbiome. Literally, every function in the body we've known for a long time is affected by the nervous system and the endocrine system. But now we also understand that the microbiome, directly or indirectly, has a regulatory influence on every aspect of the body-mind. So dysbiosis is huge. And this can actually create the danger state on its own. So the overuse of antibiotics, for example, definitely contributes to this autoimmune epidemic, where the estimate is 60 to 70 million Americans have one or more of these 155 or more known autoimmune conditions. And if you've been treating autoimmune patients in your practice, as I'm sure you have, you'll see that patients who have one tend to get others. If they have Hashimoto's, they'll develop Sjogren's. If they have MS, then they'll develop RA. You'll see this multiple thing because the causes are the same. These basic causes are the same. So that's why person with one autoimmune condition will tend to develop others, and why if the treatment must be global, where we're addressing these three areas. And then we have the leaky gut. The leaky gut, I think, is well known to most functional medicine practitioners. Intestinal hyperpermeability, where the tight junctions get loose, and these 2 to 3 micron spaces in the gut can become 200 to 300 microns in size. And I could try, at a microscopic level, you can kind of drive a truck through that. And this is very significant. You know, think about it. A red blood cell, for example, is 5 to 7 microns in diameter. In a leaky gut, these gut junctions can open up to 200 to 300 microns. So you're getting, you know, whole proteins, pathogens, everything just going right into the bloodstream, forcing the immune system to complete the job of digestion. So your immune system has to like digest your breakfast because your gut is compromised. So the leaky gut is a very common feature in autoimmunity. Some would say it's a necessary precondition. I don't agree with that. I have not found that to be the case, but I would call it a very, very common contributor to autoimmunity. Autoimmunity is much, much more than just a leaky gut. But it's a critical factor. That's why I list it here. It has to be addressed. So when we look at the triad of autoimmune support, we need to do 3 things. Now, I want to emphasize that this is not just for your autoimmune patients, this is for all your patients, preventatively, and also to support your existing patients who have a known autoimmune disease, because we have tons of people who are walking around with an autoimmune disease they don't know about. And it's very hard to diagnose. I was just teaching my I do a weekly call where I'll teach and answer questions from my functional medicine certification program. And the question came up on last week's call on Thursday. Oh, how do you know? Why is it that it takes so many years for autoimmune patients to get diagnosed? Well, it's understandable because the symptoms are ubiquitous. Like the symptoms can be of anything. Like how would you know? Oh, they have pain. Well, that could be anything. You know, they have fatigue. Well, that could be anything. And so the symptoms, there aren't any specific symptoms of autoimmune disease. And you can't test for every possible autoantibody. So that's why using this sort of global approach for all of our patients, regulate the immune system, do cytoprotective cellular therapy, cellular protective therapy, and doing gastrointestinal restoration on every patient, in addition to your autoimmune patients, is the key. That's what really, really works. If you're going to do a good job with autoimmune disease, this is what you need to do, these 3 essential things. So I want to just give you some representative formulas. This is just very basic, but good things that you can jump into right away that really, really work. Like this really works. There's much more to it than what I'm, in the short time we have here. But I wanted to give you some practical next steps that you can immediately apply in your practice to immediately help your patients. And now in the first area of immune regulation, and in each of these, I give a typical and very, very effective, like kind of ace in the hole. This is going to help them. It really works. Nutrition and also herbal medicine. So under nutrition, these are standard process formulas, which very wonderfully is now available through Fullscript, which is great. And so all these formulas are available through your Fullscript account, and you can add that in. And I recommend take these things yourself, and you'll see what I'm talking about, and then start to use it with your patients. So the Immune Health Daily Fundamentals packets are wonderful because they include the immune triad of C, F, and calcium with Immuplex, which is a very important nutritional support for the immune system in immune deficiency, but also in autoimmunity by supporting immunological tolerance, what we call central tolerance, which is housed mostly in the thymus and bone marrow. And then the best, innate or cellular immune support herb is echinacea. This is the strongest echinacea product in the world, made by MediHerb, available through Fullscript, and that is Echinacea Premium. So this is very, very good. And there's much more, but I wanted to give you something to start with. Cytoprotective therapy, there's a lot of ways to do cytoprotective therapy. Wanted to give you a couple of very reliable ways to do that. Cellular Vitality is an herbal nutritional blend formula of tonic herbs, fruit seeds, and such. and then a botanical formula supporting the nuclear erythroid factor 2, nuclear transcription factor pathway, or NERF2 as it's sometimes abbreviated, is Vitanox. Very strong cytoprotective botanical formula, and I listed there the herbs that are in that formula. Very, very powerful cytoprotective formula. Also reducing inflammation, increasing cancer resistance, and a lot of other things. And then for gastrointestinal restoration, I couldn't really think of just one formula on the nutrition side, but two really key ones. The first one, lactic acid yeast from 1939. This is one of the most extensively used and successful dysbiosis correcting formulas, is a mycelium yeast that acidifies the colon. And again, the colon must be acidic. And if it's alkaline, we've got pathogens and other problems, increased risk of colorectal cancer, and increased risk of gut infection and dysbiosis when the colon is alkaline. And so lactic acid yeast acidifies the colon, creating a beautiful environment for the healthy flora, which create and thrive in an acidic environment, and a very inhospitable environment for pathogenic forms of microbes. Remember, pathogens love an alkaline environment and hate an acidic environment. Healthy flora love and create an acidic environment and really don't do well in an alkaline environment. And that's why all of the epithelial interfaces with the outer world, the skin, lungs, skin, colon, urinary tract, vaginal tract, all of these areas are acidic, in part to prevent infection. So that's more about dysbiosis. To help heal the leaky gut, Cyredo Plus is a wonderful formula. It's organic buckwheat leaf and buckwheat seed. On the botanical side, berberine active is a Chinese herb, huangbai, or philodendron bark, and that is a very excellent concentrate in the berberine active. That's a philodendron concentrate. Here's the Immuplex, supporting the main areas of the immune system. I'm gonna have to move along here. And there's the pack, Immune System Health Pack from Standard Process. And I wanted to, hopefully I should have a few more minutes, wanted to just mention something that's quite unique to Standard Process, which is the Protomorphogen, which is absolutely essential and dramatically effective in reversing the autoimmune process and really giving the body time to heal with supportive nutrition. And this is my PIN program, which is the P in PIN stands for protomorphogens. And so I wanted to just share with you just a brief introduction to this. This is from Tom Cowan talking about Royal Lee and the functions of the protomorphogen. The protomorphogens are produced internally as cellular blueprints and cellular determinants in protein formation. And the supplemental protomorphogen has several different functions. So we really won't be able to go into this in detail. You'll just have to read it in the notes if you want to, which the wonderful Fullscript folks will send out to you. But there are, as Dr. Lee said, this is back in the 1940s and 50s. It's the smallest unit of the gene system that guides the cell into its hereditary form. But hopefully the audio will come through on this. This is one quick excerpt I'd like to share with you.
So if you provide this patient who is sensitized to his own heart protein with some extract of beef, cytotropic extract. Cytotropic means stimulative.
Oops. I'm going to play that again because it's really important.
So if you
okay.
Provide this patient who is sensitized to his own heart protein with some extract of beef, cytotropic extract. Cytotropic means stimulative. That's the blueprints of the heart cell in that extract. It's the chromosome. The thing that makes the heart different from any other organ. And when that's provided, you combine those antibodies. The inhibition is controlled. And the old heart starts to repair itself normally with its own blueprints, with its own cytotropic factor. Because we can use the cytotropic factor to get but we can't use the big cytotrophic factor to heal the heart. You have to depend on what's in the heart to do that. But we can use the B factor to get rid of the inhibitive antibody.
So that's the decoy model of protomorphogens, and giving the autoantibodies something else to target and combine with to buy you time so that it reduces the autoimmune assault on that affected organ, giving you time to heal that tissue. So I'm just going to pause here because I've got to skip that.
No, it's the opposite.
Okay.
I don't think tumors can develop until the normal protomorphisms have disappeared, so that some new. Suppose we have a patient who has had a coronary.
Okay. All right. I'm going to pause on that. Okay. So here is the four functions of the protomorphogen. One is the decoy model. That's kind of the classical model of giving the autoantibody something else to attack. And the second, which is very, very well established entity in modern immunology, is oral tolerization, oral desensitization. When you get gut exposure to an antigen, it reduces the antigenicity to the immune system. We also know that the protomorphogen supplements are loaded with microRNA, which are epigenetic RNA, which is very exciting. And that means that you can use protomorphogen really for any issue with any tissue or organ. And this, again, new research, there's a lot more to be done. But the suggestion is, because of the content of microRNA, that it actually optimizes gene expression, at least in that cell type. So we won't have time to get into all the details of these four models, yeah. So I did want to, this is an amazing quote. Old age in general is probably the development of these autoantibodies, one after the other, to one specialized tissue after another. So sort of an autoimmune model of aging, which is remarkable. And then a final quote on this subject, that the protomorphogen is a new door, which may prove to be more important than all other therapeutic measures that have yet been discovered, which is amazing. So that's that. We're gonna, looks like I've been given the go-ahead to answer some questions. Before I do that, wanted to, if you have your phone there, you can click on that QR code. I had some gifts for you for today, which is some free resources and free trainings, video, audio trainings, and also a weekly webinar that I wanted to invite you to. So I'm going to answer some questions, and let's see if we have a chat.
Yeah,
we do have a chat.
A couple questions.
Okay, and I'm just going to give you a couple of links, and then I'm going to answer questions. And I have prepared for today a Fullscript practitioner page where you can receive some free trainings that I wanted to give to you with my appreciation for your being here today. And also wanted to let you know about my current autoimmune mastery program, which happens once a year. There's the link. And I wanted to give you all, with my appreciation for being here today, a $50 tuition discount, which is simply Fullscript. And I'll put that in the chat. And wanted to just show you, and then I'm going to be taking questions in just a moment. The autoimmune mastery program, where we've done, this is a 19-hour course. So it goes into quite a bit more detail than we could possibly cover in an hour, although I'm really glad we've covered as much as we did. But this is an annual course that goes into quite a bit of detail on the autoimmune assessment and treatment and prevention. And there are several guest faculty. I wanted to just introduce you to our faculty for this course. There's myself, and then a research scientist, Dr. James Lyons-Weiler, talks about the relationship of vaccines to autoimmune disease. And then some of you may know Dr. Isabella Wentz, the thyroid pharmacist, gives a wonderful presentation on autoimmune patient management. And then we have Dr. Mark Berger, who's a senior radiologist and integrative medicine doctor, functional medicine doctor. And he does an amazing presentation on imagery, as well as his integrative functional medicine approach to autoimmune disease. And then some of you may know Sayer G, the great health researcher and health freedom advocate. He did a stunning presentation on the microbiome and the implications of the microbiome. And then we also have a massage therapist who has extensive experience with autoimmune patients, talking about the mind-body emotional connection to autoimmunity. And then we also have another presentation on light therapy. So this is autoimmunemasteryprogram.com. You can go check it out. And with my appreciation, you can get a $50 tuition discount. We've also applied for 19 CEUs for chiropractors and naturopaths and acupuncturists. So, so that is also available for those who are interested. So there's that. And then you'll see in the chat a couple of the links for you. And the free trainings that I put together just for the audience today, the Fullscript practitioners, just click on that link and you'll have access to my free weekly Monday webinars, which are free, as well as online video education on the standard process and Medicare formulas, free for practitioners. And I also put together my digestive restoration course for practitioners, a natural functional medicine approach to that. And that's a paid course that I wanted to give to you all for free for being here today. So just go to that link and then please join us. The Autoimmune Mastery Program starts this week, actually, starts in a couple of days, this Thursday. And the discount code is available all day today. So you can get your $50 discount on your tuition. All right, so that's that. And it looks like I can answer questions for a little time here. So I'm just going to pop this out and we can look at this together. And let's see what questions have come in.
Dr. Gita, can you hear me?
Anthony is asking a question. It's tricky. It's a great question, Anthony. We really don't know how many folks have an autoimmune condition. We have good estimates because the list of autoimmune related conditions is so broad now. Alzheimer's disease, depression, seizure disorder. Many of these patients, for example, OCD, and we go through all the different conditions or many of the conditions that you might not think are autoimmune, but actually are in many cases. We go through this in some detail in the course, but this is, it's difficult. So when we have estimates of 60 to 70 million Americans, but that number may be low because of all the conditions that might have an autoimmune component in particular patient. And many of the conditions that we thought were not autoimmune in many patients actually are. And so that's just really significant. So that's that. Okay, let's take a look at that. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so.
Are you able to hear me, Dr. Gita?
There it is. Okay.
Doesn't sound like it.
And here it comes. There it is. Okay. Okay. Next question is from Heather. I've had chronic elevated creatinine kinase levels the past 6 years, highest being 9. When my medical use figured out how to resolve this. Any thoughts? Yeah, if your creatine kinase is elevated, this can relate to chronic muscle injury, and so that can be, a very significant issue. So my suggestion there, Heather, would be to use some of the formulas that we talked about today in terms of gut, immune, and cytoprotection, and give that, I would use that entire combination of 3 protocols for 3 to 6 months, and then reevaluate and see how that is beneficial. So those of you who were interested in finding out more about our Gata Institute Functional Medicine Certification Program, we are in our 10th year of this program. It's been extremely successful, in increasing the practice success and financial abundance and clinical results and confidence and patient care of hundreds of practitioners over the years. Just go to cliniciansmastermind.com and you can learn about our functional medicine program, which is also, if you're interested in standard process and MediHerb, it is the most comprehensive training program in those formulas, but we cover other things as well. But that's a great program. All right, so for video consultations, yeah, go to michaelgated.com. Okay, so all right, next one, yes. So Lisa, the big thing is that most vaccines are completely ineffective in stimulating antibody production, which is all they do. They're drugs that temporarily stimulate antibody production to artificial antigens. They don't work. That small bit of antigen doesn't do anything without an adjuvant or something that puts the immune system in that state of danger or high alert. And oh, by the way, because we're not going to get to all the questions today, those of you who are joining us in the autoimmune course, which starts this Thursday, I'm going to be doing Q&A every week for 7 weeks. So there'll be lots of time for more questions to get answered in the course. So
I was going to say, there's so many that have come through. It's amazing.
I know. But yeah, if folks are interested, please join us in the course. It's awesome. And you get a discount for being a Fullscript practitioner. And I do Q&A for an hour every week for 7 weeks. So please join us there. Okay, so there it is, Lisa. It's the aluminum, and some vaccines it's the squalene. But the more vaccines you give, the more aluminum you give, the more aluminum you inject, the more autoimmune disease you get. And it's really that simple. So Pam had a question. So the necrotic tissue should stay in the tissue and be cleared on site, or where should it go if not in the blood? It's the lymphatic system, Pamela. Great question. The lymphatic system is the cleanup crew, and nothing should exit the lymphatic system. That's the circulating immune system. It's also a cleanup system. Fat transport does a lot of things, but we really don't want that cellular debris, especially the nuclear proteins, to get into the bloodstream. So you're absolutely right. You said it well. Rob Gadosi, diffuse osteoarthritis, calcium deposits in the joints. Yeah. So the issue there is microcirculation. One of the part of the etiology of osteoarthritis. And yes, now we understand, and Dr. Lee taught this in the 1950s, that osteoarthritis in many cases is also autoimmune, not just rheumatoid, but osteo. So it's not that wear and tear thing. But that's very significant. Okay, so that is that. Let's see. All right, more questions.
I know there's another question that came through about a treatment plan that you could recommend for patients with high level of thyroid antibodies, although maybe you've answered this one, but antibodies against thyroid
peroxidase. Yeah, there's three. Oh, sure. No, you gave it a good go. It's a tricky word. Yeah. I appreciate that. But yeah, this thyroid peroxidase antibody, thyroglobulin antibody, and TSH receptor antibody. Those are the three thyroid antibodies. Yeah, so the protocol that I have used, and let me, with great success. I mean, I've had, in my New York practice, one of my offices, they called me, what do they call me? Thyroid King, which I did not come up with, but they called me Thyroid King. Anyway, let me just, I can write that down for you. Thanks, Kelia, for that. And let me just write it down. So, Kaylee, I'm not getting video on this. Is this in a good spot?
Yeah, I think it's on camera. I can see it. So
great.
We can also include, as I've been saying, but we can include, all these resources, all these links to on our landing page in a follow-up email. So if people are missing some of them or lost it in the chat, we can easily send it out.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, and you know what? Maybe that's a good point. I think I'm just going to type it in the chat.
Sure. Yeah.
And then, because they'll get the chat maybe too.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have the basic autoimmune triad, and which is echinacea premium at 3 a day, Rhamania complex at 3 a day, and Immuplex at 6 a day. Then we have the thyroid-specific protomorphogens. That's the autoimmune triad. Then we have thyroid-specific support. And so the autoimmune triad is for anybody with any autoimmune disease. Thyroid-specific support would be thytrophin, cataplex C. Thytrophin is 6. Cataplex C is 6. Cataplex F is 6. That's the tablets, by the way. Is 6. And thyroid complex is an herbal, wonderful herbal of bacopa, ashwagandha, and bladderwrack, and that's also a 3-day. And that would be a good place to start. General support would be cod liver oil. Everybody needs some type of fish oil, 3 a day. And then trace minerals, B12, which is just what it sounds like. And then a multi, something like Catalin at 6 a day. And those are the 3 areas that I've had just a lot of success with. So that should help.
Yeah,
all
that's
right.
great.
Yeah, thanks for the question. All right, so that is that. And and also I did briefly, we didn't get to the slide on cancer, but if you want to learn more about that, just go to cancercourse.com. Okay, now, and for those who didn't see the link, our functional medicine program is at cliniciansmastermind.com. And if you apply to that program, I'm happy to give Fullscript doctors a discount on that program. Just mention this webinar and you'll get a 10% tuition discount on our functional medicine program. Just try to get that done this month.
Yeah.
All right, so evidence of sweet.
I was going to just cut you off, sorry, but I meant maybe one more time or one more question and give a little conscious of time for everyone else. And
Absolutely.
I think, maybe one more would be great, and we can package this all up and try to get it out to such an engaged audience.
Yeah, this is great. This is great. I was taught from a naturopathic doctor, this is a great question, that echinacea actually shouldn't be taken by autoimmune patients as it can drive the immune response, which is what you're trying to calm down. Yes, this is a super common misconception and complete lack of understanding of echinacea. It's very common. And this is like 30-year-old thinking about echinacea, is that autoimmune disease is an overactivity. The immune system's going crazy. It's overactive, which is not true. It's actually one little part of it might be overactive on the humoral side, but most of the immune system is actually weak. It's deficient. It's depleted. So we have to think of autoimmune disease as a deficiency disease, not an excess. It's a deficiency that leads to an excess, a weakened cellular immunity that leads to an overactivity in the humoral acquired immunity. But we must stop thinking of autoimmune disease as a global immune hyper situation. That's actually not true. It's one narrow part might be hyperactive or overactive, but the vast majority of the immune system is usually depleted and deficient. So if you think that the immune system is just, the whole thing is going crazy and it's hyperactive, we have to calm it down, and then you say, oh, well, echinacea stimulates the immune system, that's another mistake. Echinacea is not an immune stimulant. That's a misconception. This is one of the most misunderstood herbs in the world. It is not an immune stimulant. It supports optimal innate immune response. So we can think of it as an immune modulator, not as an immune stimulant. And there was also some, complete, real misinformation that echinacea would throw off Th1, Th2 balance. It would cause a Th1 to Th2 shift, cause more antibodies. None of this is true. This is entirely theoretical and has not been proven out in any clinical practice. And we now understand that echinacea actually modulates the immune response. It's actually anti-inflammatory if it's the right product, and the right quality, and the right dose, like Echinacea Premium, 3 a day or more, that it actually reduces inflammation. It has a cytoprotective effect, which actually helps to prevent necrosis by increasing heat shock proteins, which are cytoprotective proteins that repair other proteins that are damaged. It does everything it strengthens the innate immune response to clear chronic infection. So it does everything you need to address or prevent autoimmune disease. It also supports the endocannabinoid system, mostly CB2, a little bit CB1, and it's an anti-anxiety herb for that reason. It's the perfect herb in autoimmune disease. So even if folks who used to say that are kind of realizing, oh, wait a minute, actually that was what we used to think, but it's actually not correct at all. It's actually the reverse of what is correct. So we have to think of Echinacea root as a preventative, long-term. I've been taking it myself for 18 years. It's a long-term, chronic, daily use, healthy aging, preventative wellness herb. Now, in the old school, Echinacea, you just take it for a few days or weeks or months until you're better, and then you stop. So wait till you're sick, then you take it for as long as you need to, then stop. Like from the King's Dispensatory from the late 1800s, that's what they talked about. But now the modern research absolutely confirms that Echinacea is an ideal, long-term, healthy aging, chronic use, preventative herb. So great question to end on.
Yeah, that is a good, I definitely learned a lot, but even on that question itself, you know, how the shifting of thinking is happening over the years as they learn more is interesting, is very interesting. All right, well, thank you so much. That, as I said, we've had a hugely engaged like attendance and questions coming through. I know people are eager to see any resources we can provide, slides, recordings, anything we can kind of get out to them. I would love to grab from you. So we will try to package this all up and send it out to all registrants. Will get a link to the recording. And I've said a few times it's on our webinars page on fullscript.com. But again, thank you, Dr. Gaeta, for being here with us today. I don't know if there's any last words you'd like to say or anything else, but we really, truly appreciate this amazing presentation.
Oh, you bet. Yeah, I would just, my final comment would be, we can together definitely reverse the autoimmune epidemic. If you understand the causes, you can implement the correction and the prevention. We can definitely do this together. And it's important that we do, because people are suffering. Western medicine has very little to offer, and we can do phenomenal work reversing the autoimmune process as well as preventing the autoimmune process in ourselves, our families, and in our healthy patients. So many thanks for all of you being here today.
Yeah, very well said. Perfect note to end on. All right, well, thanks everyone, and take care, and we hope to see you soon.
Take care.